We're joined now by Nathan Dean, our colleague here in Washington, from Bloomberg Intelligence, an expert on all things when it comes to financial policy. We are still talking about Basel III, and how much longer will we be talking about it? What is the end game here? Can this really get through? And what are the next steps in seeing this change that she is talking about, Michelle Bowman is talking about, adopted?
Yeah, so, the exciting news is that Governor Bowman said that we were going to have a proposal early next year, and it would come at the end of her 4 pillars. Now, we have 4 proposals: leverage ratio, which is already out. You have the GSIB surcharge, the stress capital buffer, and then the Basel III endgame. Now, our consensus is, or at least our scenario is that this is going to be a capital neutral rule. So if you're a bank like Bank of America or JP Morgan, rather than being hit with a 9% capital increase like you would under the Biden administration, most likely would be capital neutral. Now, if the Fed and the OCC and the FDIC put this rule out in the first half of next year, call it January, February, March, they can get it done in 2026. And so most importantly for these banks, if you're trying to look at how you're going to deal with risk-weighted assets or any of your modeling, most likely implementation now is set for 2027.
Nathan, this is very fun for me because for those that don't know, which would be everybody listening, Nathan and I actually sit next to each other in the newsroom, and I am constantly picking your brain about how this all fits into the bigger picture here in Washington. And I would love your insight, particularly as we are talking about Michelle Bowman, who had been a sharp critic, right, of the Basel III endgame proposal. How does this fit into the broader structure here when we were talking about the Trump administration's plans with banking regulation?
Yeah, so when, the Biden administration, we had former Fed Vice Chair Michael Barr, when he put out this Basel III endgame, the initial proposal had capital requirements going up 19%. And you can almost hear the gasp from the banking and trade associations around town. That was huge. But when you have Michelle Bowman coming in, obviously you have a changing of the guard here. And the idea is, remember, when she said in this interview with Mike McKee that she said international standards. We're going back to 2017, looking at the international standards. Now, the Europeans have already implemented their Basel III endgame. They call it Basel IV. And you're looking at somewhere between a 3 to 4% increase in capital requirements. But when you take into the changes to the leverage ratio and maybe the stress capital buffer and the GSIB surcharge, obviously, we have to see what they're going to do with that. Most likely for these GSIBs, the Bank of Americas, the JP Morgans, and the Citigroups, you're looking around capital neutral. Now, this isn't really much of a deregulation affair, if you will, but the one thing that Governor Bowman didn't say, but she consistently says, is this idea of tailoring to banks. So if you're a smaller bank, like, we'll just say PNC, or even further down to like something much, much smaller, around the 50 to 60 billion in assets level, you're going to probably see additional deregulatory efforts come out over the next few years.
Nathan, another topic that came up during the conversation today with Mike McKee, Michelle Bowman mentioned this idea of addressing debanking. How much of an issue really is this? And is it really a problem that needs to be solved? Is there a way to quantify it? She indicated that it was sort of hard to put on paper.
So if you look at it through the eyes of the crypto sector, it's a huge deal because obviously a lot of crypto firms are out there trying to get banked, and a lot of the banking industry is like, let's just wait on this. But from the bank perspective, it's not that big of a deal. In fact, we don't write about it all that much because the debanking argument, if you will, a lot of it was driven by the Biden era regulators. And when you have a difference of opinion over at the regulators, and Governor Bowman even just said that that they're changing things called Camel's ratings and stuff like that. As you have that difference of opinion, the banks are going to be able to go out there and bank these crypto firms. But most importantly for these crypto firms is that you have things like KYC and you have AML and all these other acronyms that the banks have to follow. That's why it's extremely important for Congress to pass things like the Clarity Act or the Senate banking discussion draft that they've already discussed.
I want to stick on regulations in our final minute here, Nathan, and pivot topic slightly because we had new reporting yesterday from Bloomberg News that had clean energy stocks soaring after the Trump administration released new guidance on eligibility requirements for tax credits that weren't as punitive as the industry had feared. What do we need to know about this story?
Yeah, so I like the joke with Joe that the marijuana stocks have hot sauce, but these solar stocks like Sunrun and First Solar, they were up like 20, 30% off of this. So what the guidance did is it changed what was actually occurring in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Now, these tax credits, they're going to expire at the end of 2027, but what the guidance did is it changed so that if you create a new project by July 5th, 2026, you can actually claim these tax credits. And rather than having to pay 5% of your project up front, you can only just have to start it. And the language on how you start it is pretty broad. So if you're looking at how to start a solar project, maybe it's in 2028, 29, as long as you get started by July 1st, 2026, you should be able to claim those tax credits.
A lot to follow here coming after, of course, that signature legislation, the one big beautiful bill from this administration.